My shy immigrant dad stood up to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. 2 weeks later, we found out why most kids think their parents become less impressive as they grow up. I experienced the opposite. My dad immigrated to America 25 years ago with $200 and a chemistry degree nobody would recognize. He spoke broken English and took the first job he could find, janitorial work at Chemcorp's research facility. For 15 years, that's what he did. Parrot and mopped floors, emptied trash, and smiled politely when executives walked by without acknowledging him. At home, he was different. Parrot, animated, opinionated, brilliant when explaining how molecules worked. But at company functions, he'd stand quietly in the corner, barely speaking. I'd feel this complicated mix of love and frustration, wondering why he wouldn't stand taller, speak up, be seen. Last December, Chemcorp held their annual holiday party. As a senior researcher now, I was invited and brought dad as my plus one. He still worked there, but janitorial staff didn't get invitations. The CEO, Richard Barnes, was giving his annual speech about innovation being in our DNA when a researcher asked about the abandoned diabetes medication that had shown promise in early trials. Barnes gave the standard response. Unfortunately, the observable projections didn't support further development. Then something incredible happened. My dad raised his hand. The room went silent. Painted. No one interrupts Barnes. Excuse me, Dad, said his accent, but his voice steady. Your compound CB-714 Pernte, the diabetes 1 per T. It has same molecular base as your new cholesterol drug. Yes, Barnes looked annoyed. They share certain structural elements, but then you already have 60% of manufacturing infrastructure, Dad continued. Your cost analysis is wrong. You could hear a pin drop. My cheeks burned with embarrassment and fear for him. Barnes frowned. And you are Jan Novak. I clean your office every Tuesday and Thursday. Barnes looked like he'd been slapped. A nervous titter ran through the crowd. Well, Mr. Novak, Barnes said condescendingly, pharmaceutical development involves complexities beyond basic chemistry. Perhaps stick to areas you understand. Dad nodded politely and sat down. I wanted to disappear. On the drive home, I asked what possessed him to challenge the CEO. They make mistake, he said simply. People will die because of spread. I didn't know then that Dad had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 3 months earlier. 2 weeks later, I was called to an emergency department meeting. Barnes himself walked in looking tense. Our competitors at Merck just announced a breakthrough diabetes medication, he said grimly. Early projections suggest it will generate $4.2 billion annually. Their research team based it on the molecular framework of our abandoned CB-714. Someone whispered. Ain't that what the janitor said at the party? Barnes cleared his throat. Yes, after some reconsideration, we've determined our initial cost analysis was flawed. We overlooked manufacturing synergies with our existing infrastructure. The following day, Dad was summoned to HR. I was terrified he'd be fired for embarrassing the CEO. Instead, he was offered a position as a towering efficiency consultant with a salary 3 times what he made as a janitor. When he told me that night, I asked how he knew about the molecular structure. He laughed. I have chemistry degree from Charles University in Prague, was once youngest professor there. He shrugged. Here, no one asks, so I clean. But why didn't you ever say anything? For 15 years, he looked at me seriously. Sometimes you wait for right moment. I wait until it matter most. The company fast-tracked development of a competing diabetes drug based on Dad's insights. 3 months later, he received a bonus when his manufacturing suggestions saved millions in production costs. At this year's holiday party, Barnes introduced my father to the board as the brilliant mind we almost overlooked. Dad still speaks with an accent, still stands quietly at parties, but now everyone listens when he raises his hand. Sometimes the most impressive thing a parent can teach you isn't how to be seen, but when to speak up. Parent when it matters most.